Our discussion tonight is about gun control. We're all a bunch of gun nuts, aren't we? We demand our Second Amendment rights. Who are you going to protect yourself from? Come on, give us a break. Disregarding the fact that just a month before the Sandy Hook massacre happened, anybody remember what Harry Belafonte said? Anybody remember that? You remember the quote? A week before Sandy Hook, Harry Belafonte said, President Barack Obama should assume the powers of a third world dictator. He should be out there arresting all of his opponents. That's what he should be doing. That was just a week before Sandy Hook occurred. Anybody remember that? And then you have his Hollywood lame-brain friends who are saying, Barack Obama, when he's elected president, he should be able to do anything he wants to do. And now you have some dimwit professor saying that the Constitution is really irrelevant and we shouldn't even be listening to it or whatever. I would only say one thing to Harry Belafonte and to his lame-brain idiot friends in Hollywood and that college professor who wants to just undo our Constitution. Adolf Hitler agrees with everything you're saying. Yep, he would agree with you 100%. You're on the same page with Adolf, boy. You realize that? Oh, you don't? Well, maybe you should get an education. So why are we so crazy to be talking about our Second Amendment rights? Who do we want to protect ourselves from? Who do we need to protect ourselves from? About 10, 12 years ago, I was in the basement at the bathroom at Hudson's Eastland, which is not too far from here. It's in Harper Woods. While I was downstairs in the bathroom, there were these two young black kids standing up against the hand dryers, having a conversation. Now these kids were about 11, 12 years old. They came up to here. These kids were not even in high school yet, about 11, 12 years old. Here's the conversation I heard from those two young kids. One kid says, Reggie thinks he's a bad dude. He says he's going to kill 3 people, I'm one of them. Well, I'm going to take his ass and put him in the river before he gets me. Other young kid says, yeah, but you better do it the sooner the better. First kid says, yep, I hear you. They walk out. 2 young kids, 11, 12 years old, casually discussing murder, the same way you and I would talk about baseball scores. Oh, by the way, this is a message for General Colin Powell. General Powell, could you listen to that conversation and tell me that the problems in this country is coming from the Christian right? Yep, well, you need your head examined, sir. You are a fool. Those kids came from inner cities like Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia. You tell a law-abiding black person who lives in those cities, hey, you can't have a gun. Why do you want a gun? Are you crazy? Look at the community I live in. This community is a war zone. Our deaths from killings from handguns by people who are committing armed robberies and murders is at record numbers. We're now discussing in this society whether or not we should execute young people under the age of 18 who are guilty of murder. I was sitting in my dentist's office 2 weeks ago. I was reading a magazine, I believe it was Sports Illustrated. And this article was talking about all the young men attending Class A major colleges and universities in this country on athletic scholarships, football, basketball scholarships, who already had criminal records as youths before they came to college. Hardened criminal records. Robbery, assault. And they're going to college on athletic scholarships. And everybody's turning, well, you know, he's going to have an opportunity to play pro football, da-da-da, whatever. Where do these kids come from? What happened? During the 1980s, there was an incredible program on public broadcasting. This program was called The Vanishing Black Family, The Crisis in Black America. This program was an indictment of the welfare state policies of Democrats And what they have done to, as Jesse Jackson himself said in the 1970s, something was happening to this guy. He was making some sense in the 1970s. He says, teenage pregnancy is a scourge which is destroying the fabric of life in black communities across this country. Well, he was right in the 1970s. I don't know what happened to this guy later. He says we're building prisons in this country for the purpose of locking up young black men to create jobs and opportunity for young white men. That's stupid. That's very divisive, and it's really off the wall. The reality is, as this program was pointing out, it's Democrat welfare policies that have created whole generations of young men growing up without having any relationship whatsoever with a father. Somebody like, well, Dennis Rodman. Have you ever heard Dennis Rodman talk about his father? His father had something like 9 or 10 kids by several different women. He had no relationship with the guy. He just hated this guy. He was just a bum. He would talk about, I had no relationship with a father. Never had anybody take me kite flying or anything like this. And how many kids are growing up in the inner city like that? So who are their male adult role models? Drug pushers, pimps, armed robbers. And where did they all come from? Where did they all come from? This program pointed out it was welfare state socialist policies that created these lawless young men who grow up seeing the world as Hitler did. Remember what Hitler said? The world is a jungle. It's survival of the fittest. The strong will devour and eat the weak. That's the way these kids are growing up. In inner cities, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, all of this country. And Democrats are responsible for creating 2 generations of these kids. And fellow traveler Republicans who were too weak to stand up to it. That's what we've got. We need our Second Amendment rights to protect ourselves, Barack Obama, from the criminals that you and your party have created for the last 50 years. And what about the judges you guys appoint? Oh, these guys are a real trip. Here's a classic case. Back in 1996, cops in New York in the middle of the night saw 2 cars backed up, trunk to trunk. And the trunks were open, and there was some exchanges of duffel bags going on between these trunks. What's going on here? So these people saw the cops, they took off, started running. Well, the cops went there, they apprehended the woman who was the driver of the one car, and they were able to catch the other guys because they had the license number. What they had interrupted was a drug deal. The woman was a drug courier from Detroit. She was putting the money in their trunk, they were putting the drugs in her trunk. That's what they interrupted. Federal District Judge Harold Baer threw out the evidence. He said, you don't have a case. Why not, Your Honor? Because you had no probable cause to stop them and approach these people. They said, Your Honor, they saw us coming, they took off, and they ran. Judge Baer, the history of violence of white cops against black people, I'm sure that was on their mind. And knowing how violent white cops are against black people, if I was them, I would take off and run too. You don't have a case. Judge Harold Baer was appointed by Bill Clinton. An example of some of the stupid judges that we have in this country. So the second part is, we need our Second Amendment rights to protect ourselves from the criminals that your welfare state policies have created and your stupid judges are protecting. And then we have another policy that the Clinton administration put into effect, and this is something that Republicans should have really run with back when this happened. In the 1980s, there was a movement among the psychological community that we have to take people who are mentally ill, take them out of mental hospitals and institutions, and put them in residential neighborhoods so that you can mainstream these people and bring them back into normal society. So the Clinton administration had HUD take a city to court as a test case. This city was Edmonds, Washington. And the Edmonds, Washington decision was, Edmonds says, well, okay, if you want us to take these people into neighborhoods, we've got these areas that are zoned multifamily. No, no, no. They have to go into single-family neighborhoods. So what the Supreme Court decided was it would be a violation of civil rights and housing laws and Americans with Disabilities Act. They encompassed all of them to say for you to deny these people access to residential housing. When Jack Brandenburg first ran for office, we got a call from some people on Downing Street right here in St. Clair Shores. How many of you remember that case, what was going on? They were putting 2 such homes right on one street, and Downing Street is just located south of 10 Mile Road off of Harper, right here. They were putting mentally ill people in these facilities. Within the first 2 months these facilities opened, there were numerous police calls that were happening here. There were altercations and fights with neighbors. People would be knocking and say, hey, I need a smoke, I need a cigarette. Get away from me, get away. Come on, he's knocking on the guy's door. Suddenly he's taking pavers, concrete pavers, and throwing them out the window, throwing them at the door. These people were terrified. Well, what we did was, I contacted the guy who ran these homes, and he's a subcontractor of the state who, of course, this whole policy was instituted by the Clinton administration in the 90s. And a great article that I saw about the Clinton administration's how they're destroying your neighborhoods and how they're doing this. Now, why are these homes going in like local residential neighborhoods? Well, they wouldn't go in places like Grosse Pointe or Bloomfield Hills or Birmingham because those homes are too expensive. So you want to buy a group of homes where you're going to put 6 or 8 people who are mentally ill. And by the way, when I protested to this guy, why are these people walking the street? Well, they have the constitutional right to walk the street. Same way you, wait a minute. These people are mentally ill. Are there any psychiatrists? No, they just have a person there who's just taking care of, well, who goes in, who goes out. I mean, they would go down and be raising hell at the local Tim Hortons right over there on Harper between 9 and 10 Mile Road. Within 2 months, numerous police calls. One of the guys gets into an argument with another one, starts the bed on fire, and this was going on. Right in your neighborhoods, right in St. Clair Shores. Well, I did an investigation. I found out that these group homes have been going on for a long time, except they would house people who are developmentally disabled. Okay, developmentally disabled people are not criminals. They're the people that you would see working at the local McDonald's, or you might see them at the local Kroger supermarket. These people are very friendly. Obviously, they have a disability. In fact, I believe that Scotty Bowman, former Red Wing coach, I believe his son is developmentally disabled, and he lives in a home just like that in Buffalo, New York. So there's about 13 of these homes in St. Clair, and they have no problems. But isn't it interesting? They will not mix the mentally ill in with developmentally disabled, but yet they want to put the mentally ill in your neighborhoods. What's mentally ill? Well, I can't help myself. I have to attack somebody, or I've got to break somebody's window, or what happens if one of these guys says to a little kid, oh yeah, you remind me of Johnny who stepped on me when I was 5 years old, I'm going to bash you, or whatever. It's a catch-all. It means just about anything. Well, the Clinton administration said these people belong in your neighborhoods because we've got to mainstream them. So here, have Democrats who have created a situation where they're creating generations of criminals, at least 2 generations of criminals. Their judges are protecting them, and then they tell you that you've got to put dangerous people in your neighborhood because we need to mainstream them and they have a civil right to be there. And we're nuts. We're crazy. We're out of our minds because we demand our Second Amendment rights to protect ourselves. Who's nuts? Who's really crazy? The point I'm stressing here is that when we talk about our Second Amendment, it is absolutely foolish to be talking about it going back to 1776. Adults here and many kids can't even relate to 1776. In fact, adults and children don't even know what happened during World War II. How can we get them to relate to what our Constitution is all about in 1776? I actually heard a conversation between a bunch of elderly women at Panera Bread here a couple of years ago, and this one was saying, I've heard that in Iraq right now, our casualty rates are almost as great as they were during World War II. I says, ma'am, excuse me, I just heard, what did you say? Well, I heard, where did you hear this? Well, somebody was telling my son who heard this in school that, oh, your son heard this in school. He said, no, it was my grandson. My grandson heard this from his, oh, really? And what did your grandson say to the professor about it? Well, he says, gee, Mom, he said this to my daughter, and my daughter told it to me. He said, that's really horrible that the casualties. I says, ma'am, in the first 24 hours on Iwo Jima, the U.S. Marines had 1,000 people killed in the first 24 hours. The casualties during the Battle of the Bulge, which lasted only 1 month, you can take all the killed, captured, or wounded Americans and fill up a football stadium on a Sunday afternoon in the NFL. Where are you getting these? Don't you remember your history? There were an estimated 55 million people who were killed. Wow, that's a lot. So we're going to try to educate these people about the Second Amendment in 1776 when they don't even know our recent history. A lot of that has to do with our education system. But that's where we come in. That's where we have to educate them. And the way we start is to bring it home. We bring it home. We bring it home and says, gee, I think if Barack Obama, that's probably a good idea. But I think the first place he should start is let's disarm the Black Panthers. How do you think, what do you think about that? You think he'll disarm the Black Panther Party? Or do you think he'll go through the city of Detroit and make all those people turn in their guns, especially all the criminals? All those people who are going out there and killing other people, blacks who are killing blacks, and armed robberies and assaults and whatever. You think he'll do that? No. I don't think that's going to happen. We need our Second Amendment rights to protect ourselves from the criminals Democrats have created for 2 generations. The judges who protect them. And we are going to insist that my family is going to be safe. That's what you tell them. Now, I want to finish this on a positive note. I want to give you the rest of the story about this Judge Harold Baer, which I just checked this out about 2 weeks ago, because I want to find out whatever happened to this guy, whatever happened with that decision. Well, here is the rest of the story. You're going to like this. When Judge Harold Baer handed down that decision, Republicans in Congress, back when they had cojones, were outraged. They actually introduced bills of impeachment against Harold Baer. Bob Dole, who was running for election in that year, he called for his resignation. Also, something else happened in addition to the Harold Baer case. Rush Limbaugh and other people on talk radio says, you know, here's another example of a stupid Democrat judge and a guy named Lee Sorokin. Back in the early 1990s, there was this guy, you may remember hearing about this. He would go in this library in New Jersey, I believe it was Morristown. Morristown, for some reason, sticks in my mind. It may be a different town, but this is the story. This guy would come in there, and he would be harassing people or ogling women, and he'd be sitting across from somebody, you're trying to do your stuff, or on a computer, whatever, and he would just be making a nuisance out of himself. Plus that, the guy had a bad case of body odor. Okay? The library threw the guy out and said, you're not to come back in this library. Well, somehow this guy got a hold of a lawyer, probably ACLU, took them to court, and a federal district judge appointed by President Jimmy Carter decided, well, one man's body odor is another man's ambrosia. Besides, we have to not discriminate against the poor, so he says, Morristown, you can't keep him out of your library. Now, here was a judge appointed by Carter, one appointed by Clinton. But for that stupid decision, Bill Clinton gave this guy a promotion. He elevated him to the Court of Appeals. So Rush Limbaugh was talking about Lee Sorokin, and he was also talking about Harold Baer. This thing was raising a firestorm. Mike McCurry, the president's press secretary, at a discussion, it was a press conference, was asked about this, and he said, hey, what do you think about this decision? What do you think about this guy, Harold? He says, well, the president does not think this was a good decision, and he's asked for Judge Baer to reverse his decision. So here's what happened. Here you have a judge, a sitting judge, who was getting pressured by Republicans and in the Congress who were going to impeach this guy. Then you had Judge Lee Sorokin, who was becoming a big issue. Bill Clinton saw he had a problem. Here's what remarkably happened. In April, the case was in January with the police throwing out the evidence in the New York drug situation. He had a remarkable change of heart. He says, well, we will admit the evidence because there were things we were not aware of at the time. So he reversed his decision. And 3 months after that, Judge Lee Sorokin resigned from the bench. One guy resigns, one guy actually turns around his opinion because of a threat of impeachment. Some of you thinking the same thing I'm thinking? Maybe we should be impeaching more of these bums. Maybe our Congress really should develop some real cojones. Now, they're going to say, well, you know, we impeach their judges, they're going to impeach our judges. Fine. Great. Let the debate begin. I have more confidence in our judges and the kind of decisions if they come up there and testify before the... Oh, by the way, if they want to impeach John Roberts, yeah, fine, let's go along with that one too. I'll take that. Yeah, we'll give you a Republican. Yeah, let's go after him too. But I'd like to suggest that maybe this is something that MEDEFCO and your board may want to take up in drawing up a resolution on. That any judge who believes he has the right to legislate from the bench is violating his oath to the Constitution, because there is clearly in our Constitution a separation of powers. You are not there to legislate from the bench. You're committing a high crime and misdemeanor. We're going to take your butt before the House. We're going to impeach your butt, and we're going to send you to the Senate. And if Harry Reid and the Senate there won't convict you, let them explain why. We need a full debate. We need a full airing. And in addition to the budget, Congress can now get rid of this tyranny of the men in black by threatening these bums with impeachment and to get rid of them. Because that threat worked. It worked with Lee Sorokin and Harold Baer. Because people stood up. They says, this is nonsense. This is not going to stand. We're not going to put up with this. It's just an idea. But maybe it's something. It's time to take our country back from the judicial tyranny of the people who think it's their right to impose their sociological brand on the rest of us. Hide criminals behind constitutional interpretations that have no bearing whatsoever in terms of the law itself. And I think it's time we do that. What do you say? You think MEDEFCO might be open to putting together and drafting a resolution to doing that? Just a suggestion. I'm not speaking on behalf of Jack Brandenburg. I'm just speaking on behalf of myself. Let's put them on the defensive, because I tell you folks, we've got the ammunition, and we don't have to go back 200 years to do it. All we've got to do is look at our history and who we are and where we are right now. And incidentally, I just want to close with this. One of the witnesses before the Senate a couple weeks ago was Tony Bennett. Did you hear what Tony Bennett has to say? He said that anybody who is opposed to gun control is like the Nazis, Nazi Germany. I have a book here. The Five Families. It's about the New York Mafia. And here on one of these pages, there was a huge wedding in New York between the Profaci and the Bonanno crime families, Rosalie Profaci and Joe Bonanno Jr. That wedding was attended by 3,000 people. It was the model for the wedding scene in the movie The Godfather. Singer Tony Bennett entertained the 3,000 people. I'd like to ask Mr. Bennett, tell any of your mafia buddies there that you shouldn't have guns, they're dangerous, and it makes you like the Nazis. You phony. You left your brains in San Francisco. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.